Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Jerusalem, Israel, and we are in chapter 40 of Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. This is 40b. This one is called Mercy Concealed. You will see exactly what I'm talking about. As always, this class, the Torah study, and all the benefits that come from this is for the safety and security of our soldiers on the front lines, both in Gaza and in the north. Also for the swift return of all the hostages, the children and the women, the elderly, and all the soldiers. Oh, my God. Have mercy. The soldiers that are in captivity. You don't even know what they're doing over there. Anyway, this is for them, and of course for the safety of Israel and the elevation of Israel. Because we are currently in a time of judgment, unlike ever before, but we know this. And it's also part of the title, you'll understand. So we need these things right now. So that's what this is for. Hallelu et Adonai kol goim, shabechu kol haumim, ki gavar alenu chasdo ve'emet Adonai le'olam. Hallelujah. As Moses was shepherding Jethro's sheep for 40 years, and the beasts of the field did not consume them, but they increased and multiplied exceedingly. And concerning them it says in Ezekiel 36:38, as the flock of holy ones, Ketzon Kedoshim, a flock of saints, if you will. And he shepherded the flock until he arrived at Horeb. As said in Exodus 3:1, Moses was pasturing the flocks of Jethro, his father-in-law, the chief of Midian. And he led the flocks after the free pasture land, and he came to the mountain of Elohim to Horeb. Vayavo el har ha-Elohim, the Elohim, Horeva. It's said over here the mountain of God, but it's very specifically ha-Elohim. All right. So before God chose a shepherd to look after his flock of saints for 40 years, he had to make sure he could handle someone else's sheep, right? The entire story of the next 40 years in the wilderness is told in this one single verse. Moses was pasturing the flocks of Jethro, his father-in-law, the chief of Midian, and he led the flocks after the free pasture land, and he came to the mountain of Elohim to Horeb. That's basically the Exodus and what took place over there. It's right here. Everything is foreshadowed. So remember, the verse before this one, in the last verse in Exodus 2, and everything we're learning right here, right now, everything we're learning today, everything we have been learning, it is so incredibly accurate for our time. And just so you could say, well, it could be for any other time. Maybe so. But the beauty and brilliance of Torah is that it is timeless, and it can be applied to just about anything and everything, but how relevant it is in the sequence that also we're learning. So in Exodus 2, in the last, almost the last verse of Exodus 2, it said, and God saw the children of Israel, and God knew. This is what we discussed last week, right? Vayera Elohim et bnei Yisrael ve'yada Elohim. Why? Israel cries out as one. Immediately the Redeemer is called. The next verse, and Moses is pasturing, he's getting ready, final prep. Here we go. Time to go. There is no delay. But what did God know? He knew at the exact moment they would finally submit. What is submit, right? The moment that they would realize that if they put their faith in anyone else's hands other than God, they would slowly but surely have the life choked out of them. They were dying. When Israel puts their lives and their trust in anything other than God, I can't be any clearer. You guys understand this. In anything or anyone other than God, we are dying. We are having the life choked out of us. And if it's not being killed by terrorists in the street, then people are struggling with tremendous amounts of fear and anxiety and depression, and businesses are going out of, business. You understand, everything, the whole fabric of society is kind of crumbling. It keeps getting worse and worse and darker. The problem of what we're actually seeing here in Israel is that because we've taken so many beatings, okay, so this is life. Okay, so this is life. So this is how it is now. So this is how it is now. And if you'll speak to Holocaust survivors, and, you know, I've had several in my family, Kristallnacht it did happen overnight, but it did not just happen overnight. It was leading up to it. Slowly but surely, it started getting more and more difficult. The rights started being taken away. Jews started being treated differently. It got increasingly more difficult, and yet very slowly, right? Just like the frog in the pot of water. If you throw a frog in a pot of water, nice cool bath, no problem. If you throw it in boiling water, he'll bounce right out. Slowly you start turning up the heat. Before you know it, he gets boiled alive. This is exactly what happened then. It's exactly what's happening right now. If you looked at our situation 10, 15, 20 years ago, you'll say, wow, it can't get any worse than this. But slowly, okay, now it's this, now it's that. People almost forget how it was. They were never this brazen, okay? Except when they were in 93, and we all know what happened, the reasoning for that. And then, of course, we gave them guns, to which they used to kill us. Who's in control? It's called an Erev Rav government. Always have been. Anyway, so they were dying, and we are dying. So, like we said, not only physically, but they were being broken mentally, abused emotionally, and snuffed out spiritually. That is exactly what is happening today. And in their last attempt, just as the lights were about to go out, they cried out to their Father in heaven, and they cried, and their cries ascended to God, the verse says. And they cried out, and their cry ascended to God. That's it. There's nobody else. Government, come and save me. Police, hello? We're being attacked. Hello? Army, where are you? Intelligence, right? Israeli intelligence. There's your oxymoron right there. Everything got busted wide open. World Health Organization, save us. It's nuts, right? Nobody. So God is systematically breaking down anybody and anything that we can potentially look at. As harsh as this may be, it's actually a mercy. It's a kindness, because how do we get out of it? Where are you looking? Where your answers do not lie in your surroundings. They don't. They lie up there. That's it. End of story. Nobody can help you. No man can help. Nobody can help you. When Israel finally realizes that, suffering is over. Done. When will Israel realize that? Only when the lights are about to go out, unfortunately. Welcome to Hanukkah. Okay, so, and that is what God is waiting for. He knew that it would take them. He knew what it would take them to get to this very state. Just like this day and age, he knows what it takes us to get into this very state, because despite everything that took place, on the surface, certain things changed, but beneath the surface, really nothing changed. The people that did tshuva, the people that started crying out to God, are those that have been directly affected by the tragedy and travesty that took place. And again, not even all of them. The families of these victims, what are they doing? They're protesting. Give us back our Jew. Who are you protesting? Are you protesting Hamas? Are they going to listen to you? You're protesting the government to do what? You understand? You're protesting who? In the UN? You know that. What are you doing? Even that is misguided. Who are you actually protesting? They're still putting their faith in anyone other than God. Tell me that that's not idolatry. It is. And so, guess what's going to have to happen? But the people whose family members were in there, the latest story happened I just heard this week. One of the released hostages, 5 days before that, a guy who completely secular, living from one of the kibbutzim around Gaza over there. His 85-year-old mother was taken. And he knew an Orthodox guy at one point, and the guy said, okay, you ready to pray? He goes, I don't know how to pray. How could it be that a Jew doesn't know how to pray living in Israel today? So the guy said, I'll get you some tefillin. And the guy's like, stop joking, you crazy, right? So desperation came, and he says, listen, I'll tell you what, if, they release my mother, I promise I will put on tefillin from that day forth for the rest of my life. 5 days later, his mom got released. The guy who never put on tefillin in his life, and now he did. Great, we got another one back. Within all the dirt, sparks, one. That's why whatever happened, happened. Because even amongst, and I say, I'm going to say it like this. If you live in the land of Israel, and you hate God, and you hate the Torah, and you despise Orthodox Jews that actually fear God, and they were proudly living. These are the people that took in the Gazans to live with them every day. The Gazans are then the ones that turned them over to the Hamas. They are the ones that gave them lists. This person lives here, this person lives there. They don't care who you voted for. They don't care of your political affiliation. They don't care. They just care that you're a Jew, and they're going to kill you. And they will lie and manipulate their way, and you believe them. This is who got hit. You understand? This is who got hit. And God is showing, even amongst those people that despised me and despised my Torah and despised Talmidei Chachamim. Talmidei Chachamim, the students of the Torah. If you despise a Talmid Chacham, if you make fun of someone who is God-fearing, you have no place in the world to come. This is said in the Talmud. Absolutely. They're representatives of God. I'm not talking about all the fakers. I'm talking about the real ones. But as far as they're concerned, the real, the fake, it's all the same, right? Whose fault is that? Well, it's their fault for not discriminating, and it's the faker's fault for pretending to look like them, which are Erev Rav. We've discussed this. So God, even from these people, He's taking out the sparks, and you're doing tshuva, why? You're coming with me, you're coming with me, you're coming with me, and the rest of you, again, I don't know the cheshbonot. All I'm saying is, primarily, these are the people that got taken, not to mention also dancing around the silver idol on Shabbat Simchat Torah. Okay, that we know where that stands. That is a very big no-no. So God is now pinpointing everything. Okay, so He needs everybody, and still people are not getting it. Some yes, most no. So what's coming next? Potentially more of this, right? We hope not. We hope and pray not. But again, it's only through tshuva. As it was, so it will be. The final Geulah, the final redemption, will mirror the first redemption. I don't see all of Israel crying out. So God is going to have to dismantle everything. I know it's an in-depth explanation, but you understand. No one is coming to save us. No one. No one. There is no one and nothing else that can save us other than God. And until we realize that, it's going to get worse. End of story. This is not gloom and doom prophecies. Unfortunately, I speak to a lot of family members. Oh, the prophecy can be changed. Sure, if you do tshuva. And it's not a prophecy also if you actually read, because these things are in the 5 books of Moses. God says what is going to happen if you do bad. But if you do good, it won't happen. So do good. It's not even a prophecy. It's a condition. It's a choice that we're making. And it has to come as a nation. That's the difficult part. We are a collective. Okay, let's continue. Okay, so this is what God is waiting for. He's waiting for everybody to cry out together, right? Because He knew what it would take for them to get into that state. And this is unfortunate because it never had to get to that state, but God already told us through King Solomon, and we have already seen for ourselves that history repeats itself. And so there is no better indication for what is to come next. That's why, my friends, we mustn't get excited or be in despair. God knows. Does He not? Of course He knows. When we are ready to receive Him, and He is helping us along. God knows when we are ready to pick up what He's putting down. Okay? Like we said, He's helping us along. No army, no this, no that. Everything gets taken out. How so? Masechet Sanhedrin 97b. Rabbi Eliezer says, if Israel repent, they are redeemed. And if not, they are not redeemed. Who's Rabbi Eliezer? The Rabbi Eliezer the Great, the one whose book we're currently learning from. Rabbi Yehoshua said to him, if they do not repent, will they not be redeemed at all? Now here comes the help, because we cannot seem to do it on our own. Rather, the Holy One, blessed be He, will establish a king over them, whose decrees are as harsh as Haman. What kind of decrees did Haman decree? To be enslaved? To have our rights taken away? To live under the rule of a foreign government? No, that's easy. Esther 3:13. And the letter shall be sent to the hand of the couriers to all the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all the Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, and their spoils to be taken as plunder. There is no servitude. There is nothing. There is just death, annihilation. In other words, you would still choose maybe Egypt. You would be living under the whip and under the boot heel, but at least you'd be living, sort of, if you could call that living. This is death. So how are we going to get to that point? It's going to start off how it was in Egypt, but we know how is it going to finish. We will have decrees placed on us. Okay, that's it. We're done. Kill all Jews. No. Everyone, even the women, even the children, even the elder, everyone dead. Then watch how quickly the most anti-godly people will drop to their face and say, Abba, right? That's it. This is here. You have your formula. People are still willful, and those that don't do it, they will go. So we sampled a taste of that the other day, now didn't we, right? When people were facing death, they dropped down, then they said, So this is a decree of Amalek. And so there's no doubt whose spirit is running the show. And what happened in Israel as a result of quite literally what we read in Esther, many Jews repented, but not all. Not even close, like we said. And so you understand that rounds are going to get more and more intense and more frequent if we do not. People still do not understand this. Even the way we are currently fighting this war, understand this, goes against the way we are told to fight wars in the Torah and in the Talmud. There are rules of engagement, and the way we are doing it right now goes against the word of God. That's why soldiers are dying. That's why captives have been taken and are being tortured. And that's why they're still firing rockets. And that's why they're still killing us in the street. This is what's happening. If you guys did not know, at the entrance to Jerusalem, just last Thursday, a couple of Hamas guys, Palestinians, they jumped out of a car, which they were driving. They stopped right by a bus stop at the entrance to Jerusalem, and they sprayed 3 people to death. They killed a 24-year-old pregnant woman who was in the middle of praying. She got killed, with sprayed full of holes, her and her child, her unborn child, with a siddur in her hand. They killed one of the rabbis of the Bet Din in Jerusalem, and they killed a woman who was the head of a girls' Orthodox school. 3 tzaddikim, 3 righteous people were taken from us. What does that show you? That shows you that God is not pleased. You can somehow say, well, they were completely desecrating the Shabbat, and they were dancing around an idol on Simchat Torah instead of with the Torah. Okay, we know it says this in the Torah, but what happens when the righteous get taken? That is a sign that God is not pleased. Not pleased. Okay? In other words, this happened instead of something else even worse happening. What was leading up to this? We know, in addition to the 9 months of the protests against God and his Torah on Shabbat, you remember there was a period over there, we forget, for months that every week siblings got killed. It was like 3 or 4 weeks in a row. Siblings. It was crazy. The odds of something like this happening are impossible. What is God showing you? Milchemet achim. Brothers are going to war. Brothers are going to die. Everyone dies together. And this is what's going on. So, and again, people aren't taking heed. No one is changing. If you don't change with what is coming, you will be gone. Hashem Yazol, right? And how is he going to help? By doing this. Kill, destroy, take out. And we'll see who is really going to make a change in their lives. It's very sad. It is very sad. All right. Anyway. So these rounds that we're talking about, these are the birth pangs of Messiah. And there is only way out, as we said. Since it's also Rabbi Eliezer who said these things, he was the one whose students asked him, what can a man do and be saved from Chavlei Mashiach, from the birth pangs of Messiah, of all these trials and tribulations that are coming before the revelation of Mashiach? And what he says, Torah and Gmilut Chasadim. You live and learn and teach Torah, and you practice acts of kindness. That is what will save you from these things. Now you could say, well, I'm sure these people, these three guys who did, guy and two girls. Oh, by the way, one of the guys, a private citizen who had a firearm, he was the one that killed these two terrorists. And then two reserve soldiers shot him. It's a big and killed him. The guy who actually saved everybody else. It's that's something else, right? So he just put his life on the line. He saved the other people, and he got killed himself. So there's no doubt that 4 tzaddikim were murdered, right? Torah and acts of kindness. And let's say this is what they did. So what does that mean? Again, it shows you that if God is removing tzaddikim, it is an atonement for everybody else. It is a warning for everybody else. Because they were killed l'shem Hashem and they were tzaddikim, there is no judgment for them ever. They do not go to any realm in Gehinnom. They don't stand judgment. Even in the great day of judgment after the resurrection of the dead, they do not stand judgment. They are currently now in the highest levels of Gan Eden. Gan Eden Elyon, they are sitting with the Shekhinah and they are learning Torah. That's where they're at right now. There is nothing bad for them ever for eternity. Done. So that's where they are right now. And may they pray for us down here. So, Torah, acts of kindness, learn it, teach it, speak it, live it. And of course, acts of kindness, which is the basis of the Noahide laws. In other words, derech eretz, that's where we all got to start. Now, how else are we going to get to that if we're not on the brink of extinction? So let's finish what it says in Sanhedrin. And Israel will have no choice but to repent, and this will restore them to the right path. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. Family members, anybody, if you're watching this, I love you right now, but good God, you lean on your own understanding, this is what happens, okay? Lean not on your own understanding, but in all ways acknowledge him, da'ehu, know him in all your ways, vehu yeyasher derachecha, he will make your paths straight, which means your paths, your understanding, your ways are by default crooked, because they are not God's ways. It's very simple. You don't have to go out. We know exactly what to say. We know exactly what to do. God told us exactly what to do. If you're looking in the gray area when it comes to this, no. The world is one big gray area. That's why it's all me'urbav, erev rav. But God's ways are true. Emet, there is no opinion when it comes to this. There is how to live a good life. Or not. So please remember this wherever you are. Everything is from God and God is all good. Chesed, loving kindness, is mercy revealed. And Gevurah, judgment, is mercy concealed. They both get you to the same place, and you choose which path you want to take. I don't believe it's a coincidence that we are studying the works, like we said, of Rabbi Eliezer the Great during these times. Baruch Hashem. He's the one who's talking about what's going to happen in the end times. So, and how to get through it, of course. So what was it? So what is it that will be? As Israel cried out to God, Moses gets the call. And there, the Holy One, blessed be He, was revealed to him from within a bush, as said in Exodus 3:2. An angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire from within the thorn bush, and behold, the thorn bush was burning with fire, but the thorn bush was not being consumed. Now, it says thorn bush. It added thorn bush. It might have been a thorn bush, but it didn't say thorn bush. It said hasneh, bush, but whatever. Now, the Hebrew is so beautiful, and as it has such deep meaning, the poor translation just obviously doesn't cut it. So, just so you know, it says, the angel of the Lord appeared to him from the heart of the fire, from within the bush. Vayira malach Hashem elav belibat ha'esh. Lev is heart, belibat, libat, the heart of the fire, within the bush. But appeared flame of fire within the bush. Missing the whole meaning over there. Now, if you read this sequence in the chapter, you will see that God worked with Moses the way he does with anyone else. This is no different, just on, different levels, on a much higher and grander scale, obviously. So it starts with the angel of the Lord. Then when Moses goes to look, and Elohim called to him. And later on, we see God introducing himself as Eheye, I will be. And then after that, in chapter 6, he finally says that he is the Yud-Ke Vav-Ke, the four-letter name of God. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a revelation that keeps on happening over here. It never comes all at once, not even to Moses. And then, so as high as Moses was, and there was no one higher, according to the 5 books of Moses, this is God saying this, he still had to receive things one step at a time. If God was to open with the revelation of his highest name, it would be too much to bear. That's why these hits come slowly but surely. And guess what? If what we saw on October 7th, we thought that was hard, we know that the next one is going to be even more difficult. We know this. It's more intense, more intense, more intense, just like the revelations, right? Because through the darkness, through these revelations, that's where we get the answers. That's where we get the light. The more intense the darkness, the greater the light. You see? I hope you do. And Moses saw the fire from within the bush, and the fire did not consume the bush, and the bush did not extinguish the flames of fire. Now, the bush does not grow in the earth unless it has water beneath it. This is fascinating what God is showing Moses, because it's essentially the perfect peace and harmony that surrounds his throne and exists throughout his entire universe. So check it, right? Here's another miracle that happened here. The fire not consuming the bush is dependent on several things, none of which follow the laws of nature. How does a bush grow? Like we said, only through water and sunlight, which means there had to be water beneath the bush for it even to exist, right? Right, on the top of a mountain, no less. Not only that, but the water also had to run through the roots and vines in order to maintain its life force, which means that the bush was not only sitting right above water, but there was water within it as well. This might explain why the fire did not consume the bush, but now we have to ask the question, which is, how did the bush, which was in water and filled with water, not put out the fire? You see? And if you want to cancel out the possibility of water up in the mountain, then let's read what it says in Deuteronomy 9:21. Where was this? This was Mount Sinai, also known as Mount Horeb, also known as the mountain of the Elohim. That's the same place where Moses would receive the Torah. What does it say in Deuteronomy 9:21? And I took your sin, the calf which you had made, and I burnt it with fire. This is after the golden calf. Moses is, reiterating the point. And I crushed it, grinded it well until it was fine dust, and I cast the dust into the brook that descends from the mountain. There was water coming out of the peak of Mount Sinai. So we have a bush, and we got fire and water and earth mixed together along with oxygen, right? All mixed together. There is a perfect coexistence over here, something that is completely unnatural. Just so you understand that this miracle is so much greater than the bush is not burning, because it should. No. So, this was not a dry and arid mountain. Otherwise, why would he be shepherding the sheep over there? Now, again, he did not necessarily go up the mountain with the sheep. If you read the book of Jasher, it says one sheep got away, he went after it, and that's where it led him, right? Because the mountain itself is holy, and then we see that God actually tells him that. So there was water, there was grass, and there was at least one bush, right? So what we are seeing here, and we can only imagine what Moses is seeing, like we said, is fire and water coexisting, and neither is encroaching upon the other, but rather coexisting in perfect peace. And how does this relate to God's throne? Michael on the right, he is water. Gabriel on the left, he is fire. And they work together all the time. Again, it's not like, okay, you're only standing here and you're only standing there. A lot of times, Michael brings the fire in the Tanakh, One is not necessarily exclusive to the other, but one actually has a dominion over the other. And there's even a hierarchy. We know that Michael, he's in charge of Gabriel, right? Okay. So of these, of the fire and the water coexisting, of these we conclude the Amidah prayer every day when we say, Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru. Amen. He who makes peace in his high places, may he bring peace upon us and upon all of Israel. And we say, Amen. And where's this taken from? From Job 25:2. Dominion and fear are with him. He makes peace in his heights. Hamoshel v'fachad imo, oseh shalom bimromav. Job knew what was up. Where's the peace in his heavenlies, in his high places? Fire and water are coexisting, no problem. And so may fire and water also coexist as they should down here. Shalom aleinu, peace amongst us, amongst brothers. So Moses saw this sight, and he wondered greatly in his heart. And he said, what kind of glory is there in this midst? He said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burnt. The Holy One said to him, Moses, Moses, stand where you are, for there I will give you the Torah to give to Israel, as said in Exodus 3:5. And he said, do not draw near here, take your shoes off your feet, because the place upon which you stand is holy soil, Admat Kodesh. Try and picture this for a moment. Just let this be a whole nother thing for you, okay? On top of this mountain, there was a pool of water, and it was coming up from the earth, running down the mountain in streams. And within this pool of water, there was a bush on fire that didn't burn, and it didn't extinguish the fire. Now capture that image within like a sphere, let's say, and you have the four elements, right? You have fire and water, holy soil, earth and air, oxygen. What element was missing? Well, nothing. No element was that. You might be thinking, but wait, it said it in there. You remember what it said in verse 2, the translation in verse 2? Vayera malach Hashem elav belibat ha'esh, and the angel of the Lord appeared to him from the heart of the fire, from within the bush. Go, Captain Planet. You see what I'm saying over here? The spot of the burning bush that wasn't being consumed, yet wasn't being extinguished as it was in the pool of water. That was where Moses would then enter into the dark cloud and ascend to heaven to receive the Torah, I think. But only because we just read that, the Holy One said to Moses, he said to Moses, 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 stand where you are, for there I will give you the Torah to Israel. From here we have learned that when one stands in a holy place, he must remove his shoes, as the Holy One, blessed be he, instructed Moses. Where the priests were working in the temple, they were barefoot. When Jews go up to Temple Mount, if you do decide to go up to Temple Mount today, you are not allowed to wear leather shoes and not even fully tie them. People go up properly. No leather, right? You got to wear open sandals. You have to go to the mikveh the night before, and you have to walk in a very specific pathway as not to, God forbid, step over the holy or the holy of holies, and because you're putting yourself in judgment over there. And yes, even if there is a mosque there now, but don't worry, it won't be there for much longer, the ground is still and always will be holy. There are rules, people. And God said to Moses, as read in Exodus 3:10, so now come and I will send you to Pharaoh and take my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. Moses then said, but this is not what I have said, as I have a blemish in my speech, as said in Exodus 4:10. Moses said to the Lord, I beseech you, O Lord, I am not a man of words, neither from yesterday, nor from the day before yesterday, nor from the time you have spoken to your servant, for I am of heavy mouth and heavy tongue. Kvad pe vekvad lashon anochi. This was an understatement, as we had explained many times before, right? What happened to Moses? Moses, understand this, Moses was very tall and he was a very good-looking dude. Some people say that he was, like 5 amot tall, which is almost 2.5 meters, okay? Just so you understand how tall is Shaq. Shaq is like 2 meters, right? So Moses would be bigger than Shaq, specifically, significantly. Again, don't, like, how could he be? Because he could. Adam was 50 amot, okay? 100 amot, that's 50 meters. Don't start right now with your disbelief. We're talking about Moses and everything that happened here. Anyway, it says that Moses was very tall and very good-looking, a good-looking dude, and yes, even at age 80. He had a radiance, and both the Egyptians and the Hebrews favored him. Our sages say that in Exodus 2:11, where we read, "Now it came to pass in those days that Moses grew up, Vaigdal Moshe vayetze lechav," right? Moses grew not only in stature, as in, because the verse before that it says, "and the boy grew up," and then the next verse it said, "and Moses grew up." So the boy grew up in stature. Moses grew. How did he grow up? He grew up in status in the eyes of Pharaoh and all of Egypt, as he, like Joseph, was given charge of Pharaoh's house. He was very well respected wherever he went. And in addition, which is where it counts the most, with his own people, as the verse says, "and went out to his brothers," meaning he knew he was a Hebrew, as did Israel, as did Pharaoh. And though he was raised as an Egyptian prince, his heart was with his brothers. I say brothers. Why? I didn't say with his people, but his brothers, as he saw himself as one of them, which is a true sign of humility. And they saw this as well, not my people, even though they were his people. And he could definitely say that, given the fact of what he did from the following 40 years, but he saw them as one of them. He never looked down upon anybody. It wasn't only one time that he went out to see what was going on, but for a while, so everyone knew him, right? Now, why am I saying all of this? Because Moses' face around his mouth was deformed since he was about 3 years old. This is when he grabbed the crown from Pharaoh's head, when Bilam tried to kill him. You guys know the story, right? He was on Pharaoh's lap, he grabbed the crown off his head, and Bilam says, "That's the kid, he's going to take the crown off your head, we got to kill him." Pharaoh's like, "Yo, dude, this is my grandson. No, and I love him." And then Bilam made a whole stink about it. Pharaoh couldn't ignore it, because again, as much as Pharaoh ruled Egypt, he still sort of had to please his, what do you call it? Not constituents, his subordinates, right? They would still, there was still politics involved somewhat. And we will see this with every single kingdom except for the one of Nebuchadnezzar. No one ever questioned him. It's very interesting. If you learn the book of Daniel, that's what that was. But anyway, we'll talk about it another time. Right now, Bilam said, "Okay, so let's make a test. We're going to have a pot of gold and a pot of hot coals. Whichever one he reaches his hand out to, if he reaches his hand out to the gold, we kill him, because that means he's going to take your crown. But if he reaches out to the coal, then he's just a stupid kid." Moses obviously reached out to the gold. Gabriel was there. First, he disguised himself as a minister, trying to help things along. Then he, where no one could see, he moved Moses' hands in the coal. Moses then burnt his hands, and then he, as an instinctive child, he then put it in his mouth, on his mouth, and in his mouth, and he burnt his lips, and he burnt his tongue. Okay, and everybody's laughing, just a stupid kid. Right. Okay. So despite him not being able to speak properly because the skin around his mouth melted together, it never kept him from doing what he needed to do. But speaking was something he could literally not do. Okay? It's like telling Stevie Wonder to go drive you to the movie theater, then watch the movie with you, and then describe what he saw, and, just for the sugar on top, just also to paint a portrait of you afterwards. This is where Stevie would be like, "I am a man without vision." Okay, you get the point. Moses continued and said, "Furthermore, you are sending..." So in addition to, "I am a man that cannot speak. I cannot speak." He He could not close his mouth. That's why the pakod yifkod that he said was a miracle within itself. Because if you cannot close your mouth, how do you pronounce the letter P? Oh yeah, that's it. No, God spoke through him. Do I not give men a mouth? Do I not give you a voice? What you worried about? Do what I say, right? Okay. Moses continued and said, furthermore, you are sending me into the hands of my enemies, those who wish me harm. Now the text says enemies. So in addition to Pharaoh, who is in the simple text wanted to kill Moses, as said in Exodus 2:15, Pharaoh heard of this incident and he sought to slay Moses. So Moses fled from Pharaoh. This is when Moses killed the Egyptian, right? And so there must have been others. These others were Datan and Aviram, who actually told Pharaoh about what happened several times, and we'll get into that. So long story short, the man that Moses saved from the Egyptian the day before was Datan. Datan was one of the taskmasters who were one of the officers, taskmasters, who were placed over their brethren. Their task was to make sure that the Hebrews completed their daily quotas, right? If any of the Hebrews would fall short with making bricks, which happened more often than not, considering the fact that the Egyptians took away the materials by which to make these bricks, the taskmaster would then have to point out to their Egyptian officers who fell short, right? And then you have to hand them over to the Egyptians for beating, flogging, and any other types of torturous humiliation, which they would do even on a whim on a daily basis. If the Hebrew taskmaster would not turn in their brethren, they themselves would receive whatever punishment was coming. The incredible thing is, and this shows really who we are, that never happened. Not a single time did any of the Hebrew taskmasters hand over their brethren to the Egyptians. Not one time. But instead, they chose to take the punishment upon themselves every time, every single day. This is unimaginable. These people got it and they took it for everybody else. And it was also these individuals, these particular individuals, who were later appointed as officers and judges over Israel. Why them? Because they had already proved themselves. They could have easily just pointed in the direction of the guilty party and spare themselves, but they took it for their brothers, time and again. They were not looking for recompense, nor were they looking for gratitude, but to fulfill the example of Judah and the sons of Jacob, who said that they would rather die than hand over their brother Benjamin to be a slave. And of them it is written in Exodus 18 on the advice of Jethro, the father-in-law of Moses, no less, but you shall choose out of the entire nation men of substance, God-fearers, men of truth, who hate monetary gain, and you shall appoint them over Israel. Leaders over thousands, leaders over hundreds, leaders over 50s, and leaders over 10s. These are the people. And who exactly were they? These are the ones that took the beating, who were already leaders over thousands and 50s and hundreds and 10s. And it would be men like these who were appointed to be judges in the future, as said in Deuteronomy 16:18. You shall set up judges and law enforcement officials for yourselves in all your cities that the Lord your God is giving you for your tribes, and they shall judge the people with righteous judgment, mishpat tzedek. You shall not pervert justice. You shall not show favoritism. Remember these verses because they will come into play later on. You shall not show favoritism, and you shall not take a bribe, for bribery blinds the eyes of the wise and perverts just words. Bribery isn't necessarily only, if you do this, I'll give you something, right? I'll give you money. Bribery is also, if you don't do this, I'm going to break your legs. They got their legs broken. You see? So in other words, it goes both ways. Justice, justice, or rather righteousness, righteousness. Tzedek, tzedek, tildof, you shall pursue, that you may live and possess the land the Lord your God is giving you. Excuse me. For without men like these, in the seats of judgment, we have no future. Case in point, 2023. See my point? It's if we lived good, if we lived well, if we lived according to what God said, none of this would happen. But we are living quite the opposite, and so, okay. Anyway, one of the Egyptian taskmasters, whose job it was to inflict hurt upon Israel, sent Datan out of his house to go work in the field. And it was night. Now remember, the Hebrews, Israel, they had no rights, as any Egyptian could come in at any time and do whatever they wanted, right? So he sent him to go work in the field at night. No, but they didn't have spotlights, okay? You don't go to work in the field at night. It's not done. But he did it because while he was out, the Egyptian was sleeping with his wife. When he came home late that night and he lay with his wife, he knew what had happened. And by the way, because of this, if, for instance, I'll give you an example. If, according to Jewish law, if you're married and you and your wife, you get a divorce, and if she remarries or if she is with anybody else physically, you are not allowed to be together afterwards. You cannot sleep with her even if you get remarried. If she is with another man in between you, you're not allowed to do that. Case in point, that means he is no longer permissible to be with his wife if another man was with her, even through whatever. We're going to see exactly. This was not rape what took place, okay? Excuse me. So in any case, so this was the situation. He was no longer allowed to be with his wife. So the next morning, so he basically knew what happened and he knew who it was, sort of. And the next morning, when they looked at each other, Datan and the Egyptian taskmaster, the Egyptian knew that he knew, so he started beating him severely. And that's when Moses intervened. So all this happened, and I believe that you can actually read of this entire event in the book of Jasher. What happened the next day, we read in Exodus 2:13, he went out on the second day, the day after he stopped and after he killed the Egyptian. And behold, 2 Hebrew men were quarreling. And he said to the wicked one, why are you going to strike your friend? Re'echa, your friend, your brother, your fellow. The wicked one was Datan, the one who Moses saved from the day before, and who he was arguing with was Aviram, his wife's brother, making him his brother-in-law. And what were they arguing about was what to do since his wife became pregnant with the Egyptian man's child and was going to be raising his kid, right? Or raising his kid already. And it wasn't necessarily that specific Egyptian man. Before you feel any remorse for his wife, know this, okay? During the time when Israel were in Egypt, there was only one single harlot from all the women of Israel, a promiscuous woman who would take all the Egyptian men she could, and that was Datan's wife, and her name was Shlomit. Don't name your kid Shlomit. And this was something all of Israel knew because the Egyptians were all very dark-skinned, right? The direct descendants from Ham, Cush, Mitzrayim, super dark-skinned, while Israel were all like Middle Eastern to like light-skinned looking, meaning you couldn't hide the fact that he wasn't the kid's father. So not only was this son a mamzer, a bastard, but his father was an Egyptian, the literal manifestation of impurity in the world. Nothing good could come of this kid. And nothing good did, just like nothing good would come of his father, which is why it said Moses looked ko vako. What is ko? Kaf hey, 25. He looked 25 and 25. He looked 25, 25. What's 25, 25? 25, 25 is 50. 50 is binah, the gates of binah, the gates of understanding. Moses looked throughout this guy's entire lineage. He says, nothing good is coming of you. And Moses said God's explicit name, dropped him right then and there. He didn't use his hands. He called name, drop, done, right? Kova kova, efen kova ko, right? So he looked right into Binah, nothing good, take him out. And nothing good did. Leviticus 24:10. Now, the son of an Israelite woman, and he was the son of an Egyptian man. Look what became of this kid. Went out among the children of Israel, and they quarreled in the camp, this son of the Israelite woman and an Israelite man. And the son of the Israelite woman announced the divine name and cursed. So they brought him to Moses. His mother's name was Shlomit bat Divri lemate Dan. Shlomit, the daughter of Dibri from the tribe of Dan. She was from the tribe of Dan. She didn't fall under her husband's tribe, which was a Reubenite. Datan was from the tribe of Reuben. So we know what happened to this kid in the end, right? They placed him in the guardhouse until his sentence would be specified to them by the word of the Lord. They went to inquire of the Lord, what are we doing with this kid right now? Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, take the blasphemer outside the camp, and all who heard his blasphemy shall lean their hands on his head, and the entire community shall stone him. That's what happened from this guy. Okay, so I say all this because you need to know who this guy and his brother-in-law are, right? Moses heard them arguing, and he knew this guy was being cuckolded by his wife, and despite this, Datan chose to remain with her. That's also not kosher. So these were the other ones of which Moses said, you are sending me into the hands of my enemies, plural, those who wish me harm. Okay, that's why here's the story. Now you understand what's going on, because they were the ones who informed on Moses to Pharaoh so that he should kill him. Now, I actually gave an entire class on Datan and Aviram. You could check it out. It's called The Long Mile, okay? And it definitely is a perspective from the viewpoint of these two, particularly Datan. I found it really fascinating in his story. This story, just long story short, if you don't want to listen to the class, I'll just tell you, it's the conflict between Superman and Lex Luthor. Superman doesn't have anything against Luthor, right? But Lex Luthor has something against Superman. Why? Lex Luthor is a super genius. He's a self-made multi-billionaire, the richest guy in the world, the smartest guy in the world, build cities, empires, businessmen, everything. He was just like, he was the peak of human condition, and he worked for it. Just like Datan. He got where he was because he took a beating every day for his brother, and all of a sudden Superman comes along, the chosen one, their Messiah, if you will, right? That's the whole concept. All of a sudden the Redeemer comes along, Moses, and he's imbued with all these powers. He just dropped the dude with the word. What's going on? Now Israel is going to start to follow this guy. This is the son that was promised to them. He's going to come into, I worked for where I am. Who is this guy? You see, Moses didn't have any quarrel with Datan. He actually saved his life. But Datan, based on ego, he had a problem with Moses / Superman. Okay, watch the class. It's a whole back and forth. And not only that, he also raised this kid. Even though the whole thing was done in impurity and for personal gain, at some point you still kind of feel for this guy. But later on, at some point, you also understand that he really had a choice and he could have come out on top, but he chose not to. Okay, so it's called The Long Mile. Check it out. It's definitely a perspective from their viewpoint. So the bottom line is this. They were the ones who informed on Moses, so he had to flee, and they were the ones who informed on Israel when they left Egypt, as said in Exodus 14:5. It was reported to Pharaoh that the people had fled, and Pharaoh and his servants had a change of heart towards the people, and they said, what is this that we have done, that we have released Israel from serving us? These two, Datan and Aviram, they stayed behind because they were foaming at the mouth. So they informed. Now, obviously, this was God's plan. God wanted to get Egypt out of there into the sea. So they're not, you understand, everything is according to God's plan. Not only that, they're the ones that instigated the Korach rebellion. As it is, Korach being the wealthiest guy in Israel, and a Levite should not be wealthy. A Levite is dependent upon the charity of Israel. This is the hierarchy. So why is this guy the wealthiest dude in Israel? look what it did to him, right? In other words, you have a specific tikkun to make. You have a specific spot where God put you, and now you're living not the way that you specifically should be living. What is your end? The ground will open up its mouth, and you will be taken down to Sheol, the sixth realm of hell, alive. That's what's up. And who just like nudged him and pushed him over the edge? In addition to his wife, Datan ve'Aviram, they saw an opportunity. Hey, dude, you're also a Levite. Go take out Moses. They had it in for Moses from day one. So we went off, but we had to explain who these enemies were and why they were his enemies. Gotta love the Torah. It's amazing, this stuff. You also understand like the psychology and dynamic of people. It's jealousy and loss and responsibility and being drunk with power and money. It's just amazing. So Moses said, thank you for sticking with me. So Moses said, furthermore, you are sending me into the hands of my enemies, those who wish me harm. This is why I fled from them. In other words, to begin with, God told him, God told him, do not fear them, for the people who seek your life are dead, as said in Exodus 4:19. The Lord said to Moses and Midian, go return to Egypt, for all the people who sought your life have died. So, Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer asked the question that we are all asking. Now, were they actually deceased? No, they were alive. However, they have completely lost all their money and their status. They were now at the bottom of the bottom of the bottom. Even the taskmasters lived slightly above Israel, slightly better than the rest of Israel, despite all the beatings that they took, right? So from here we learn, as it says, from here we learn that anyone who loses everything, nechasav, is considered dead. We've seen this with Jacob, when he helped out his nephew Eliphaz from killing him. What was the story there? Jacob left, Vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheva vayelech Harana, right? Vayivga b'makom vayelen sham ki ba shemesh. When he left Beersheva to go to Haran, he left with gold and jewels and silver and, the staff, which then, he knew what it was, but then it was just to stick to everybody else. Why? Because he was going with gifts and a whole lot of gold to give to Lavan, because Lavan coveted gold. And Esav sent his son Eliphaz to go kill his brother, Eliphaz's uncle. And he caught up with him and a couple of his friends. And he said, and Jacob's like, okay, dude, I know you're following me. What do you want? And he says, well, I got to kill you. And Jacob's like, why do you want to kill me? I'm your uncle, man. And he said, because my father said so. And Jacob said, yes. And guess what? Jacob was the one that taught Eliphaz Torah. So Jacob told him, but did I not teach you lo tirtzach, you shall not murder? And Eliphaz said, yes, but you also told me honor thy father and thy mother, which is higher up on the list. So I have to honor my father who said to murder you. And Jacob said, I have taught you well, young grasshopper. Let me help you out of this tough spot. Take everything I have. Take all my gold, silver, jewels. Leave me this, useless walking stick and maybe the clothes on my back, because according to halacha, how did they know halacha didn't exist? We know the answer to that, don't we, guys? Right? It did exist. It always existed because the Torah was always here. It wasn't given yet, but they had a complete understanding, and that is how they lived. What did he say? I told you, if a person is left completely poor, it is as if, halachically speaking, bashamayim, that he is dead. Take all my belongings this way. You will not transgress the command of thou shalt not murder, and you will fulfill the command of your father. Honor thy father and thy mother. So he took everything. Jacob was like, okay, at least I got my stick, right? He went back to Esav. Eliphaz went back to Esav. And he told him the story. Esav's like, he's like, yep, that would, okay, what can you, he was very angry, obviously, but what could he possibly say? He couldn't be angry at his son, right? Okay. Now, so we saw this with Eliphaz not killing Jacob. Jacob was considered dead. And now we see it again with Datan and Aviram. They were completely flat broke, as they were considered dead. Now, here comes the musar, the musar, the lessons to be learned. Know this. Let's say you went bankrupt or suffered some tremendous monetary loss. And I mean, you are left with nothing. There is nothing, okay? And you were angry with God because you lost everything. Please pause right after I say the following couple of sentences, okay? And then go beg for forgiveness from God. Just hear me out. If you lost everything, that means that you are marked for death. I almost called this teaching marked for death, but it would be too ominous. And we're going into a time of tremendous light. Not appropriate. Okay, so, but it was cool, you know, Steven Seagal, right? Okay. Of the 80s, or is it 90s? When he was cool. Anyway, this, if you got everything taken from you, that means you were actually marked for death. You had a decree of death on you. This person is going to die. But since God had mercy upon you, he took your money instead of your life, thereby changing your course for the better, despite what you may think. When you lose everything, you no longer have anything to lose. It's freeing. Nothing to worry about, nothing else to lean on except for, you see, guess what's coming? Everybody's going to lose everything. It says same place in Sanhedrin. Ein ben David ba ad shelo tichle pruta min hakis. The son of David shall not come until every last penny, pruta, cent, is taken from everyone's pocket. Why is God doing this? Because he's going to bring down everyone to the same level, just as it was in Egypt. Now, to you who lost everything and you, chas v'shalom, had anything or did not, thank God, right? Please take a few minutes. Thank God for the opportunity that he gave you that you most likely didn't deserve. Now, do not delay. Do not wait until the end of this video. Pause it right now, even if you know all this, okay? Just stop for a moment. Recognize how much God loves you, that you merited to be alive at the greatest time in the history of the world, okay? Please, go. Even if you know this and even if you thanked him, it's okay. Pause the video for a second, say, Baruch Hashem, thank you for that. Thank you for my life. Here I am, okay? Go, pause. Welcome back. Okay, you have just been given a new crack at life. Gratitude. The reason this happened is because the path that you were on was detrimental to you and your surroundings, your family, the world, Israel, whatever. So consider this a clean slate, a fresh start, and please do not make the same mistakes again. So while you might see all this as judgments of sorts, it is in fact mercy. Now, to a lesser degree, anything short of losing everything, though it is not the equivalent of the atonement for death, it is the atonement for something else to which we should also be grateful for, right? If we stub our toe or lose our toenail or bump our head or for whatever, or lose something, anything. It's all kaparat avonot. Instead of a bad judgment happening to you, inconveniences happen to you. And in the grand scale of things, these are really inconveniences. You still have your life. That's the greatest gift that God gave you over here. What are you going to do with it? And every time is an opportunity to make yourself better. Okay. So people always complain because things don't go their way. This is not the right way to go about it. Now, I'm going to quote Mike Tyson. You ready? Don't judge me. David said the same thing in Psalms 119:99. Mikol melamdai hiskalti. From all my teachers I gain understanding. Iron Mike, ladies and gentlemen, older, wiser, and just as lethal. He said this. God, I'm not going to do the impression. I can't. Well, maybe I can, but forget it. God punishes people by giving them everything they want. True statement. And you know that he spoke from experience. And I can tell you from my personal experience, should we say that again? Because that's how beautiful this was. God punishes people by giving them everything they want. So from my personal experience, if God gave me everything I want when I wanted it, I have no idea where my soul would be today, but I certainly would not be here, sitting here in Jerusalem, teaching Torah. Absolutely not. Thank you for not listening to me, because I was a child and I had no idea what I was asking. And I could speak for and a lot of people can identify with this, I'm sure. Do not complain about anything, since it is all kinds of mercy, despite it coming to you in an unlikely appearance. Because if you do, then naturally you will really have reasons to complain. If you complain about things which you should not be complaining about, you should never complain. And that is exactly how God deals with his children, Israel. Israel, by way of the world, are the lowest of all nations. God said, I didn't choose you because you were the greatest and most numerous, because you're the lowest and most despised. That's why I chose you. Israel, by the way of the world, are the lowest of all nations. We are supposed to be the lowest of all nations by way of the world. But by the way of God, Israel are above the ways of the world. Israel's sins are just like anyone else's sins. And since our covenant is more strict, our correction is more severe. I don't like punishments. It's called correction, but whatever works for you. How many times did God say that he would destroy us? And yet, here we are. How could this be? God is not a man that he should lie, said Bilam, right? Isaiah 55. For just as the rain and the snow fall from the heavens, and it does not return there, unless it has satiated the earth and fructified it, and furthered its growth, fructified. I don't even know fructified, whatever. And has given seed to the sower and bread to the eater, so shall be my word that emanates from my mouth. It shall not return void, unless it has done what I desire and has made prosperous the one whom I sent it. So why are we still here if God says, I'm taking you out? You do this, I'm taking you out, I'm taking you out. This is where the Christians love to keep reading the verse. For a while, I'm bringing you back. Why? How? Why are we still here if this is what God said? This is likened to the story where the king decreed that anyone who transgresses his command shall be put to death by this massive boulder. It's just sitting there. You do this whole thing on your head. Turns out the king's own son transgressed his word publicly for all his ministers and his entire kingdom to see. As all his ministers wait to see what the king is going to do, meaning, is he a righteous judge or is he going to show favoritism towards his own son? After all, it is the king who told us how to live in Deuteronomy 16, 19, 20, which we read earlier. You shall not pervert justice. You shall not show favoritism, and you shall not take a bribe, for bribery blinds the eyes of the wise and perverts just words. Righteousness you shall pursue, that you may live and possess the land that the Lord your God is giving you. And do we not take example directly from the master of the universe himself? Deuteronomy 32:4. The deeds of the mighty rock are perfect, for all his ways are just. A faithful God, without injustice, he is righteous and upright. Hatzur tamim poalo ki kol drachav mishpat el emunah ve'ein avel tzadik ve'yashar hu. And how can one be righteous, perfectly righteous, and perfectly just, and merciful at the same time? For does it not say in Exodus 34:6, and the Lord passed before him and proclaimed, Lord, Lord, benevolent God, who is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, and abundant in loving kindness and truth. How is this working right now? How do we get around this conundrum? Well, we can start by saying, thank God that we are not God. But the answer is in the next verse. Preserving loving kindness for thousands, forgiving iniquity and rebellion and sin, yet, here's your answer, yet He does not completely clear of sin. He visits the iniquity upon the parents, on the children, of the parents upon the children, and the children's children to the third and fourth generation. And this has been rolling over and over and over. Now back to our story. How does this translate? The king indeed took the rock, the punishment due, and smashed it to pieces. And instead of bringing the whole thing down on his son's head at once, he started throwing pebbles at his head. This is called a payment plan to get us out of debt. But it is God, and God alone, who decides the size of the payments and when he is coming to collect. Some of the pieces of the rock were smaller than others. Some were minor inconveniences in the form of really tiny little rocks and pebbles. Sometimes it was just a whole bunch of rock dust in the hair and in the ears. But the son lived. And sometimes certain pebbles were bigger than others. Sometimes they were bigger rocks with jagged edges, which could leave his son bruised, and sometimes left his son bloody. And occasionally, they left his son with internal hemorrhaging and a coma on life support. But we're focusing on the life. Yes, the son was still alive and would be until when? The rocks would stop when the debt was paid. All the while we are building merit by taking responsibility for what we are owed, and we are better for it in the end. So even when you receive correction, you can choose how to receive it, and you get merit for how you receive it. You take it like a man or a woman, whatever, but you take it because you know that this is coming to you. So not only are you fulfilling your debt, there's a surplus within that. You understand? Brilliant. So, loving kindness is mercy revealed, it's obvious, and judgment is mercy concealed. A great light is about to come into the world. Please be ready to receive it. I cannot express my gratitude for bringing you these teachings. Baruch Hashem, thank you. Thank you. And Be'ezrat Hashem, I will be here next week to do so again. So thank you for you guys for joining me all the time, every week. Thank you so much. Thank you for your support, for your prayers, for your emails, for your calls. Love you. Anyway, in the meantime, you guys have a wonderful rest of the week. Have a Chag Chanukah Sameach. Thursday night we start to light candles. Make this count. And have a Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye.